Brittany, this is actually perfect timing to bring you on. As you probably heard the last few minutes here, we were talking about the mystery of Stephen Strasburg and where the Nationals are at. So how you doing? Thanks for the time and your thoughts on the team you used to cover.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, Scott. They're not going to be very good, and unfortunately, they might not be good for a while. Which really, when you hear about injuries like Kay Cavalli, it's unfortunate because he was such a big part of like what they're trying to build there. Stephen Strasburg might go down as the worst free agent contract in baseball's history, and I know there's some competition for that, guys. But keep in mind, he was coming off of a World Series MVP appearance. The Nationals had to decide between Strasburg or Anthony Rendon. They said that they couldn't afford to keep both. As soon as they picked Strasburg, people were wondering, can he stay healthy? It seemed like almost immediately the answer was no, he cannot stay healthy. And, I think, unfortunately, and I don't really like to say this, but we may have seen him throw his last professional pitch. I mean, he's just been absolutely ransacked by issues. And these aren't just like hamstrings or obliques. These are nerve issues. These are things in his hand. I just don't know if he's ever going to come back and certainly be at that same level. I don't know if he's ever going to come back and throw another pitch.
Whoa, that's like breaking news right there, Brittany. Like, he's never going to throw another pitch? No, that's great.
At the big league level, I just don't know if I see it. I mean, again, I covered this guy in 19 and 20, and in 20 we never saw him. It was setback after setback. Here we are, 2023, and he's still having trouble getting on the mound. I mean, he's not getting any younger. I don't know what it's going to take for him to get back out there.
Where is he with the team now? Do you know?
He's rehabbing. He had a setback, so now he's, they thought he was going to be ready for spring training, but according to manager Davey Martinez, he told reporters that were down there that, he had a setback. He was looking good, but again, you never really get to see him. Everything with him is kind of cloaked in this secrecy, right? It's, well, he had a setback. Well, he's not feeling well, and he's never been a big media guy, so it's really tough to decipher what's actually going on with him. Again, I mean, he wins the World Series. He wins the MVP of the World Series. Those are two huge career milestones, and we really just haven't seen the guy since, and we certainly haven't seen the guy that we saw in 2019.
So, Brittany, speaking of the Nationals and Stephen Strasburg, what is going on? Are they still selling? Are they still trying to sell the team? And what's going on with the Orioles and them having lawsuits, suing each other over TV? Can you explain this to our viewers?
Guys, it will give you such a massive headache that I don't know if there's enough like Advil in the world for this. I mean, if you had a baby when this first happened, this Masson dispute, that kid would be in middle school by now. That's how long we've been talking about this. Just insane, right? To think about that.
But that's still happening, right?
It is still happening. And unfortunately, when you get involved with the Angelos family who own the Orioles, they're lawyers. So they're going to sue and countersue and sue and countersue and find loophole after loophole to keep this in the court system. And what it's really doing, as you said, is are the Nationals still selling? Well, yes, they'd like to. But unfortunately, if you sell a team that's got no RSN rights and is making virtually no money from the TV rights, that's millions of dollars. In some cases, closer to $1 billion. So the actual price of the Nationals is going to be next to nothing. I mean, Ted Leonsis, who owns most of DC sports, wanted to buy them. He kind of looked at the Nationals. He's interested in the Orioles as well. But you can make the case that the Orioles are the better team to buy, guys, because they own more of Masson. They own pretty much all of Masson. They're a team that doesn't have a lot of payroll commitments. We mentioned Stephen Strasburg with the Nationals. They owe Patrick Corbin a lot of money on the books as well. They deferred so much money that they're going to be paying Max Scherzer until he's probably in a wheelchair. So you look at the way this organization is set up, and yeah, they would love to sell. The Lerner family would love to sell. There just aren't the buyers because the Nationals just don't have the price point that they want because they're locked in this dispute. And this dispute started, guys, when the Nationals came to D.C. The big problem here was the language. Bud Selig allowed this language to say, well, the Nationals were earned what is a fair market value instead of just putting a number on it and a percentage on it. And these two teams have been locked up in court for years trying to figure out what that fair market value actually is to have the Nationals encroach on what the Angelos family said was really Orioles territory. DC was people would drive down when there was no team there and go to games at Camden Yards. Well, now they have the Nationals, and the only reason the Orioles signed off on that was because of this Masson deal. But what I'd really like to see happen is Commissioner Manfred get involved when this gets out of the court system. There's nothing they can do right now, I was told, while this is still actively being legislated, being kind of argued back and forth. I'd love to see Commissioner Manfred just dissolve the whole thing and be like, you have an RSN, You have an RSN. You're two different teams. I just don't know if we're ever going to get there.
Awesome stuff. It's Todd Frazier. How are you?
I'm good, Todd. How are you?
Good to see you. Quick question. I know you just had a baby. Congratulations, first and foremost. That's awesome.
Thank you. He's in the next room, so hopefully he's quiet.
Yeah, of course. I was reading about the stolen bases that you've been talking about, writing the story back. Now, my question to you is, do you feel like in these next 2 weeks, spring training, there's going to be a lot more stolen bases and ongoing through the year? Like you think records might be broken, things like that coming up for this season?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I spent about 10 days in Arizona earlier this month, and it's really interesting to see now what you're seeing. And Giants manager Gabe Kapler called them vaults, like secondary leads. And AJ, I don't know if you have a specific opinion on this, but he said guys are now kind of doing this little bit of a first lead. And then once they kind of can gauge what's going on, maybe the guy threw over, maybe he doesn't have any disengagements left. They're taking that second vault and they're really out halfway in front of the bases. And, I've talked to guys who are pretty good base stealers, guys who are playing, guys who are not playing anymore. And there seems to be this consensus that you're going to see a lot of teams backpick more with the catchers. Now, if you have any kind of speed at all, once the catcher backpicks and throws down to first base, that guy who's halfway down the line is pretty much gone. I don't think enough people are talking about the ripple effects of this kind of a rule. 4.5 inches for a guy who's fast. I mean, that's the difference in a bang-bang play. It's no longer a bang-bang play. That guy is now safe. It is a half a step. You're giving a half a step. Imagine Ricky Henderson getting a half a step. The guy would have had 300 steals in a season. I mean, when you look at what this is going to do, it's going to change the way we evaluate catchers. It's going to change the way we evaluate pitchers, because being quick to the plate is now a necessity to give them any kind of time at all. 4.5 inches is a massive difference when they're adding that to the bases. It's going to be something that teams are going to steal a lot more. You're going to see guys who, remember, in the expanded roster days, you would maybe see a guy on a playoff roster just to steal bases, right? You may see that now during the regular season. A guy who's on that roster just to run the bases, because now that's going to become even more important. Guys who can go first to third, guys who can take that extra base. We're getting back to, and what MLB wanted to get back to, was like the early 2000s of stolen bases. This is the number one thing that fans have wanted to see, is more stolen bases. And I think it's really going to have a ripple effect, especially because teams are not going to be able to shift like they used to shift. So you're really going to see a lot of guys who maybe would have been stuck in AAA now have this skill set that we're looking for.
Wow, Brittany, you're talking right to me. Stuck in AAA? I love this. Oh, talking about catchers? This is tremendous. And your dog's name is Thor? Like, I'm a huge Marvel fan. Brittany, you might be my favorite new writer. Just saying.
Thank you.
But the whole stolen base thing, I want to go back to some of the Orioles stuff, but now you brought up some stolen base stuff. Are there projections out there? Like what are the projections for 4.5 inches of, like, how many guys were out by 4.5 or less inches from last year? Or, like, what does it look like? Because we're not getting, Todd said it quickly, records. Ain't nobody reaching Ricky. Like, let's pump the brakes on that. But what are the projections?
Yeah, I think, and I've talked to a lot of people that think we could see someone steal 75 bags this year, which, look at what we've had. I mean, I think 20 was tops one of these last couple of years. It's been steadily kind of declining. There's been like a year or two where it's been high, but we're going to get back to guys who, used to steal 20 bases now may steal 35, 40 bases. And I think it's not out of the question to see that 70 steal guy, because like I said, I think teams are going to look at the roster construction a little bit differently and say, hey, this guy can help us on the base paths. This guy can get on with an infield single, right? Because again, those bases, that half a step that these speedsters are getting, and all of a sudden he's on third base. So you're looking at that. You're also looking at how we evaluate catchers. I mean, how often would, you and AJ like to be backpicking all the time? How important is that now? It's unlimited for catchers to do that. Whereas we know with this disengagement rules, MLB has set the limit on what pitchers can do. So you're going to see that kind of factor in as well. And if you're fast, as soon as you see the catcher go to throw to first base, you're taking off for second. So it's going to become this cat and mouse game with guys, baiting that throw, taking that base. I think we're going to see a lot of, it's a really exciting play. We're going to see a lot of guys kind of go first to third that way. Tatis, if he's healthy, how many times is that guy going to try to steal home now? I mean, you're opening that window that for so long it was just kind of ajar. Now it's wide open. So I think 60, 70 steals, not totally out of the question at all. I wish we had data on this guy was out by an inch, this guy was out by 2 inches. We don't really have that. But if you look at guys like Trey Turner and some of the kind of premier fast guys right now, a half a step for those guys is huge. You might as well give them another 15 stolen bases right off the bat.
It's 4.5 inches. 4.5 inches is what, that? Like that?
Almost half a foot.
So but gosh, it's amazing that it's going to make that big of a difference. To me, I think more of what you said, Brittany, to me is the new rules, not only the fast guys, but with the no shift and more action. That's what I want to see, right? Is first to third, like base hits to right, where lefty pulls the ball through the 3-hole, the guy goes first to third, right? Like to me, that's a bigger deal than. But if you're talking about like this much, and we're going from 20 to 40 stolen bases, man, I'm gonna get out there and work on my 60 time.
I mean, I still go to Rajay Davis, who, was a prolific base stealer when he played, and he said, like, no question that's a half a step for the fast guys, which I didn't realize. Again, I'm not fleet of foot. So 4.5 inches to me is like, I don't think it makes that big of a deal if you're a catcher and you're kind of lumbering around the bases anyway. No offense, guys. I mean, I don't think you're all of a sudden going to steal 50
perfect.
bases.
That's perfect.
I mean, I think I know it's under 90 between the three of you on here now. So we don't really have like the fleet of foot right now on this show. But if we did, I think, you give those guys a half a step that are already fast, that are already good base stealers. And we know it's not just speed, right? It's reading what's going on in the game. It's a lot of cat and mouse, but also what Davis said, and I think is really interesting, is because the throwovers are limited, these guys are fresher. I mean, it crushes their legs to keep diving back to the base and take that lead, go back to the bag 5-6 times, right? Now they know it's only coming once, maybe twice. So they have fresher legs, so they're even more at an advantage to take that base.
I think you might be high on your projections. I think if you run an extra 30 times as a 40 base stealer, your legs are going to be gassed. But I want to get back to the whole Orioles thing, unless you guys want more on the base stealing.
No, go Orioles, Kratzy, because I'm going to follow you too, because I'm fascinated by this.
Like, I'm so fascinated by how the fact that, one, MLB doesn't have any regulation on this, and two, like, are we going to? You said my new baby's going to be in middle school, so I got a middle schooler. So when my son Ethan was born, like, they've still been arguing about this. When's it going to end? Is he graduating high school before this ends?
Maybe. Unfortunately, MLB can't really step in because it's still, like I said, it's still in the court system. And this is kind of the Angelos' plan all along, right? Was, first off, you never give a lawyer that kind of ambiguous text of fair market value. They should have assigned a number value to it. They didn't. And now this is kind of an inherited problem that Rob Manfred's going to have to deal with. So, no, I think this is something that probably isn't going to go away unless the Orioles sell the team or Masson somehow dissolves. Now, Masson is pretty much exclusively owned by the Orioles. So, I don't really see that happening. So it's just kind of going to be this problem that continues until the courts finally throw it out. I don't know much about the court system, but it seems like if something has been kind of caught up here for over a decade, can't we all just agree that, like, this isn't getting settled by the court system at all? That they're going to keep kicking this can down the road at some point? Aren't you like maxed out on like lawsuits and court appearances? I don't know. But honestly, this has to really be done in the legal system for MLB to do anything. So they're just kind of caught here. And it's impacting the Nationals, who, as we said, are going to be terrible this year, who would like a new owner to kind of start fresh, to know what they're working with. I mean, what if a Steve Cohen type guy buys the Nationals, right? That totally changes the direction of that organization. But right now, who wants to buy a team that doesn't have any TV revenue coming in? Nobody. It's just not a good buy, especially when you look at kind of all the money that's tied up. Now, the Orioles, like I said, the opposite problem. They have no money tied up. They haven't done anything. They haven't spent anything. So they're actually the better buy if you're looking to buy a baseball team.
I know who should buy the Nationals, by the way. Whoever's getting all the legal fees for the last decade and a half, they are definitely a billionaire at this point. I mean, that shit's been going on forever. Yeah. So on the TV topic, and then we'll get back to the Orioles. Britt, of course, the big news this week that has fans really confused for the most part is what's going on with Diamond Sports connected to Bally's and how there's the bankruptcy filing. And most fans don't really care about too much of the nitty-gritty. At a high level, they just want to know, can I watch my team somewhat for free through one service, or am I going to be hopping around to 10 places and there's going to be absolute chaos? It does seem like MLB has had a backup plan in place. They put out a statement yesterday, but what have you been hearing about all of this and taking from people being able to watch their games in peace this season?
It's so funny. My mom lives out in San Diego, guys, and she was grilling me about this yesterday because she's like, what else do I have to buy to watch the Padres, And I do think that, MLB statement said yesterday, yes, they declared bankruptcy, but right now, while the bankruptcy continues, while these filings go on, they're going to continue to have these games air on all of these respective RSNs. And MLB very quietly has kind of been anticipating this. Like you said, Scott, they hired a bunch of people to be in charge of like this new media department, I think about a month ago, which basically was a backup for all this. They've been preparing for some time to have these games be done by the league. And whether those go on MLB Network, whether they go on, buying the at-bat, I would love to see something where you can buy MLB TV and you can just choose that one team. It becomes a little bit more a la carte. And if you kind of go back and listen to what Rob Manfred said earlier this year, that's something they're trying to do. They're trying to get a way where fans can do this and not have to deal with the blackouts. So I think for at least the start of this season, nothing really changes in terms of how you watch your team if you are in fact a Bali team. But I think as we get to that All-Star break, as this bankruptcy filing kind of finishes up, and I have no clue what kind of timeline goes on with bankruptcy, guys. I have not ever filed for bankruptcy, which is nice. But I think when you look at kind of how this goes down the road, MLB is preparing for a scenario where they're going to have to take over about half of these teams' broadcasters and these broadcast rights. And, according to the club contract, they have to have these games available. So if you're a fan and you're worried, you're going to be able to watch these games. It just comes down to what's it going to cost? Are you going to have to buy something new? Are you going to be reimbursed for buying these apps that had your team? Those are all questions that MLB right now is kind of grappling with.
Well, this sucks as a fan. That sucks as a fan, right? Because if you're, say you have DirecTV or cable or whatever, and you have Madison or you have Bally Sports Atlanta, right? And you're turning on every night to watch the Braves, and then it's not there. And now I got to pay $150 to get MLB TV. Now, I do like the idea about where you said you just buy your team's games, but most fans also want to watch their rivals. So I like that idea, Brittany. But I mean, some people also like, hey, the Mets are playing the Marlins, Alcantara's pitching, I want to tune in. So I like that idea, but I just don't know that that's going to work. People will buy it, but
well, you can buy the whole package. MLB.
Yeah. But I do like that idea. That's a good idea, Brittany. You should work for the league. You have already more
I
ideas.
did that for 10
idea.
years.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're not there.
True.
Smart thinking. We're talking Orioles here. Like, they're in a tough division, right? Yankees, Red Sox, all these Toronto, big money. The Rays figure it out every year. They were better last year. Like, what are their chances? I know they have the young players. And why in the heck did they not go out and sign anybody like a big-name free agent pitcher, let's say, or a hitter to stick in the middle of the lineup with Rushman and some of these other guys?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that honestly I'm pretty disappointed about, especially because GM Mike Elias said that this was going to be the winter. They were going to spend more money, and fans took that and kind of ran with it, and kind of envisioned them maybe being in play for some of these not top free agents, but maybe the B-level free agents, and they still didn't even do that. So I think unfortunately, the edict from ownership is still to keep that payroll low as they continue to graduate these guys. I mean, we're starting to see, like you said, that the Adley Rushmans, and you're starting to see these young guys, but there's also the Grayson Rodriguez's and the guys who have yet to kind of really make that impact at the big league level. And I think that they're kind of waiting for that moment. They feel like last year was too early. It was ahead of their timeline. And, in my opinion, I mean, I covered Tampa Bay in 2008 and people kept saying, oh, this is too early. They're not supposed to be good yet. Well, guess what? Guys are going to get good when they're going to get good. Tampa Bay obviously went to the World Series that year, right? So I think when you see these guys start to peak, and we saw it last year down the stretch with the Orioles, the best thing you can do is support that team. And unfortunately, it looks like they kind of saw it as a little bit of an outlier, guys playing over their skis a little bit. And they kind of went back into, well, let's just see what we have here over the next year. Let's continue to develop on our timeline. So I think, unfortunately, they're not going to be able to compete with a lot of these guys in the American League East. I mean, you look at the Yankees, you look at Toronto, they just don't have that presence. They don't have those proven big leaguers that they should have supplemented the roster with. So as much of a good job as Elias has done and Brandon Hyde really has kind of evolved as a manager there, I still feel like, and they feel like clearly, they're a year away from really being in this mode of, okay, let's supplement now. And it doesn't help matters at all that John Angelos, who is now the primary control person of that team, has said, hey, we want to emulate Tampa Bay. And we know that Tampa Bay doesn't spend. So are they going to kind of become this Tampa Bay Cleveland model where they never go out and get those free agents and they're always just playing for the wild card and rolling the dice with their young guys? Because that's really disappointing. I mean, we live here about 20 minutes outside of Baltimore. And I got to tell you, when the Orioles are good, and Adam Jones and I were just talking about this Monday in an interview, I mean, it's special. The whole city, it just comes out. It's just the Ravens and the Orioles. It's a two-sports city. So it's unfortunate that the Orioles are still in that limbo, and I don't see that changing. I don't see them going out at the trade deadline, for example, and making a big acquisition. It's just not in the plan. I think they're going to be more exciting this year. You're going to continue to see those young guys come along, but you're certainly not going to see any real competition from them, I think, until 2024.
I'm having deja vu because they said that a year ago that, oh, we're a year away, then we're going to spend. This was supposed to be the offseason where they at least started to do some things. It's been every excuse in the book. Oh, we finished second or third on certain free agents. And it's funny, I was thinking about that line too. Angelo says we're going to be the Rays. If you remember, when Mike Elias took over, he said we're going to be the Astros. The Astros are nothing like that. Like they're not a top 5 spending team, but they spend on their team. So this is a completely different category now that you're rebranding yourself as a franchise. And for me, that's why I put them definitely in the top 3 of teams that need to be sold to another owner at this point, where you have brothers suing each other. Like, it's a disaster. And if you look at this team, Brittany, they weren't far away from making the playoffs last year. And I'm looking at this year and I'm like, and you can see from Vegas too, like they don't have them being that good, 4th or 5th in the division. They're not making the playoffs. Last year at the trade deadline, the players were pissed. If you went into the clubhouse, the players were pissed. They were basically tanking last year, even though if they had added a player or two, they might have made the playoffs. They got rid of Mancini. I know he didn't play that well with Houston. They got rid of at least one reliever, right? Who'd they get rid of?
Their closer.
Their closer.
Their closer.
It's ridiculous to me. They are the prime example to me, Brittany, of a team that needs complete restructuring in terms of how they operate as a franchise, because we've seen Baltimore spend before with this ownership group. So they're just saying, screw it, we're done. So are fans in Baltimore completely outraged at this point? Because I go on Baltimore radio pretty frequently too. We've been talking for like 7 years about this moment, and now they're not doing anything.
Yeah, exactly. I think they're just disappointed. I mean, I think a lot of people are still really high on Elias because you look at what he's done to kind of develop this organization. You know, they're finally doing international stuff. For a long time when I covered that team, they wouldn't sign any international free agents. So they've made a lot of strides, but you're right. I mean, look at the 2014 team that ran away with the American League East. That team spent money. Look at the contract they gave to Chris Davis. They kept blaming that as a reason why they couldn't spend. Well, Chris Davis is done now. They bought out a good chunk of that contract. So, you look at this organization and you look at this city and this fan base, and they will come out. They will back this team. So it does, to me, boil down to ownership and boil down to, well, we want to be Tampa Bay. And I think the real epidemic in this sport is these owners saying, well, as long as we kind of try, it's like the Chicago Cubs. As long as we're kind of okay and kind of stumble into a wild card once in a while, people will still come. It won't affect our bottom line that much. And, we'll still be able to pocket millions of dollars. I think too many organizations look at it like that and not like the Padres or the Mets. And we need to win a World Series. Otherwise, this season is a failure. I think a lot of teams are okay just being that 80, 85 win team, especially the Orioles. I mean, they're looking at it as, well, we could get lucky. Last year we played okay, but we're not going to do anything to help our cause, which to me makes absolutely no sense at all.
I know we're killing the Orioles here now, but like, to me, if you add 2 pieces to maybe the starting rotation or something, like how many teams right now have a shot at, and I want to hear if you think they have a shot at it, Adley Rutschman for MVP and Gunnar Henderson for Rookie of the Year. Like, you have 2 guys that have established themselves that are now looking to be like elite players in the game, but they don't add to that. Do you think they have a shot at winning that? And like, Why would you not add to that? But I guess you already hit on that, so I can't keep killing it.
No, you can.
No, and it's true. And like no one else is talking about, they moved the fences in so that they could attract free agent pitchers, because for years and years when I covered them, nobody wanted to go there. I mean, Camden Yards, hitters want to go there. No one else wants to go there because it was a bandbox. So they adjusted the dimensions so they could attract free agent pitchers, and then they don't go out and sign anybody that makes you go, ooh, we finally got this guy. Right? So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And I agree with you. I mean, Henderson, Rushman, I mean, you're talking about centerpieces. Yesterday I was on a podcast, we're talking about the Pirates and O'Neal Cruz and kind of how he's a centerpiece of what that organization can be going forward. I mean, these are two guys who could change the trajectory of where Baltimore is headed, but you need other pieces. I mean, if you think just two good players is enough, I mean, Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani say hi out in Anaheim, right? I mean, you need to build a team around them. So I'm really flummoxed as to what they're doing. I can only think that at the ownership level, they're saying, hey, we can't spend right now, because there's no reason why Mike Elias, who came from Houston, wouldn't say, hey, let's spend some money. We're going to spend some money, and then go out there and not spend it. It's got to be kind of an ownership level edict. I can't see any other reason why you wouldn't want to capitalize on what was a lot of optimism last year. People were going to the games and they were excited. People are just looking for a reason to support this team, and they've done very little to say, hey, we are going to give you a team worth cheering about.
Listen, I love everything about what you got some passion, girl. I love this. And that's why we talk about you should be part of MLB or part of a team and just run the show. We love that. So for me, my question leading into that would be, what do you love about baseball and what do you not love? Like, because I can feel the passion. I can feel the heat. Like, you're a Jersey girl, like just loving life. I can feel that. Like, talk to me about what you love about baseball.
I am from New England, so yeah, there's a lot of that
Close
passion,
enough.
right? Yeah. I mean, what I like is I'm a very competitive person. You know, I swam at Michigan State. I power lift. I'm just like I've always been like wired to be that high level athlete. So for me, watching high level athletes, watching the best guys in the world compete, and that's why I love the WBC so much. I mean, the Dominicans and the Venezuelan guys, you're gonna have to rip the jersey off them for them to go home. It seems like. That's what I love the most. I love the atmosphere of baseball, these close games, the strategy, things like that. I mean, obviously what I don't like is what everyone doesn't like the rain delays. Those games are starting at 10 p.m. at Yankee Stadium with a doubleheader tomorrow, things like that. I think the game, the way the rules have kind of sped up the game, is going to be good for it. I agree with what a lot of people have said, including Adam Jones, that they feel like eventually we may have to treat the ninth inning a little bit different. We may have to slow down the ninth inning because it's exciting. If it's a 12-0 game, no. But if it's a 2-1 game, I don't want to speed up Craig Kimbrell, right? Like, I don't want these guys to move faster. I want to savor every pitch. And I think that's what makes the game so great, is when you get to those close games, those pitcher duels. Now, I was lucky enough to cover Max Scherzer when he was in D.C. I mean, that's appointment viewing. Watching a guy who broke his nose and then yelled when we asked what was wrong with his face, go out there and just absolutely shove. I think those are the moments you're like, is there any sport better than baseball? Those are the things that keep me coming back. And I've covered this sport, like I said, since 2008 with Tampa Bay. And people always ask me, like, are you bored? Baseball seems boring. It's the same stuff. It's not. It's always different. There's a different guy. There's always those one or two guys who have no business, who really had no business being in the big leagues, that get in there and guess what? They're better than anyone thought. They turn, this opportunity into a career. And that's what I enjoy watching. I mean, I'm a storyteller. I'm someone who likes to talk, clearly. But when you look at the game, I think there are so many different, games within the game. And Buck Showalter was great at kind of explaining that, the game within the game. There's so many other things going on that people aren't talking about. And those are kind of the things that I really love about the sport.
So, Brittany, you mentioned, jerseys and this and that. I don't know. You can see my official Great Britain sweatshirt, I think, that they sent me.
Oh, gosh. That's poor Great Britain. Poor Great Britain.
True. So we're going to do this later on. First of all, Santander from the Orioles has made a name for himself in the WBC. I'm sure you've been watching it, and he's always been a good player, but he might have elevated himself to the next level. But we're going to do this later. We're going to rank our favorite jerseys in the WBC. So I'm going to put you on the spot here. Can you give me your 3 favorite uniforms from the WBC that you've seen?
Well, Mexico, I think, is undoubtedly number one. I'm sorry, Great Britain has to be at the bottom. When they played each other, it was like the best and the worst at once, and I couldn't focus on anything else. I think the Dominican, just because there's like that aura about the Dominican, and like I said, those guys are just playing at like a different level. You know, you look at Manny Machado, and I don't think I've ever seen him this locked in. And I've covered him since he got drafted. So I think that the Dominican team as well, but Mexico is the top jersey. And then I have to go the USA. Otherwise, people are going to accuse me of like not liking our country. So I think I've got to throw them in there, the red, white, and blue. It's been
I feel
cool
like there
to
could
see
be
Mike
more,
Trout.
though. I feel like there could be more
They
on
could
the
have done a
USA.
little more.
They've had the same jerseys for every WBC. Like, can we mix it up?
Yeah, but then
bit?
what do you want? Like, what's number 2? You're knocking her number 2. What do you
No, I
think's
like Dominican.
better?
No, she said Dominican.
I mean,
Yeah, the
3.
Dominicans are good. And the Mexico
I like
is
Puerto Rico. They have
number 1.
Rico has the lighthouse and the waves. Like, that's cool. Venezuela has their colors. Like, I get it, but like, it's time for something new for the USA. Sorry, this is my
It's
opinion.
funny,
I like
Brittany. He
USA.
asked you your top 5, but somehow we're getting his instead.
I mean, everyone but Great Britain has been fine, right? Great Britain, like somebody approved that. Somebody was like, "That's the look." Who? Why?
Well, what, Brittany? I got a quick question. I keep looking at his sweatshirt. Would you buy that sweatshirt?
Take the T off
and rock it?
No. How about now?
No.
Okay.
How about now? Without the T.
But he could move the letters around real quick.
Great Brit on there.
Yeah.
It could be Great Brittany.
Yeah,
Would you buy it
Great
then?
Britain.
Wait, hold on.
See, that's what I'm looking for.
Yes.
or Great Brit.
No,
How about that?
absolutely.
She goes by Brit sometimes. Oh,
Great
that's not
Brittany.
bad.
Wait,
That's
no,
not
Great
bad.
Brit.
There we go. No, great. I know it's a Y, right? But doing the best I can.
Yeah,
with what
I
have
like
to work
it.
with.
I like it. I mean, it's still terrible font, but I could take it because it says Brit.
And here, I want to finish with this. That's
My
amazing.
end ripped, by the way.
Yes. Well, that's fine. I'm sure that'll happen in Great Britain's next exhibition game. But there was a fan, we posted some of this stuff and people were loving it on social. And Brittany, there was a fan, I'm trying to get more active now on Twitter. I was silenced for a little bit earlier on in my career that I shouldn't get into shit with fans. But I'm usually pretty nice. And with one fan, he was like, no one cares. He's like, we're just worried about the game. No one cares about uniforms. And I just like nicely said, it's not true. If someone's putting that shit on and you're a player, like that affects you in terms of your confidence, in terms of what anyone thinks about you as a team. We talk about uniforms all the time. I'm saying like players talk about it, fans are into it. So I nicely said, you're completely off on that one. Like the uniform matters. And sure, many of them can like blend in where it's like, oh, that's fine. I don't love it. I don't hate it. But and that one's fine in my opinion. That's not bad. I think it's the grades. Like the grades needed to be immediately burned after game 1's loss to the USA. They could have just blamed it on the loss, which they didn't even actually play that bad, but I would have immediately burned it. I would have done the Chris Sale thing. Cut the damn uniform up and say, we're not playing in this shit. This tournament's making millions of dollars. This isn't right. Somebody, like you said, approved this. And I actually think within the next few days, we've talked about this, there'll be an article in The Athletic, probably Stephen Nesbitt, because he put his bat signal up on Twitter and said, I'm on it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the uniforms matter. Was it Vance Worley who looked like he had like misbuttoned it right on Great Britain? And you're like, this is just not a good look. You want something crisp. And the players care. You guys know. The players care about shoes. They care about the uniforms. If people didn't care, MLB wouldn't sell all those alternate jerseys, right? Like what is it called now? What's that series called where they all have the different jerseys, different teams every year?
City Connect?
City Connect.
Yes.
Sorry,
if
you
people
were
didn't
rudely
care
cut
about
off by
uniforms, they
Todd
wouldn't do
Frazier's
that.
massive malaria or whatever he's got going. But no, you're right. City Connects, yeah, and they're very love-hate too, right? Some people, some of the ones that come out, like the White Sox one, I think is awesome. We talked about that, but yeah, you're right. No, it's a huge selling point, but even for the pride of the players too. Like we've heard it from players where they're like, yeah, this uniform is shit.
Yeah,
like exactly. All I think about is Buck. One year they did like a 1980s theme or whatever in Tampa Bay, and the uniforms were so bad. They always make the other team wear it too. The Buck wouldn't. He's like, I'm not leaving the dugout tonight. I mean, as you know, he always wears that pullover, so you never see him in the full uniform. But we didn't see him the whole game. He's like, I'm not coming out of the dugout in this shit. So yeah, they all care.
What did Dion say? Look good, play good, look good, feel good, play good?
Yeah, I mean, that's for any. Imagine going to a job interview and your shirt letters are falling off.
But can you imagine? No, but like how many websites, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Handles or TikTok, uni this, uni that.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they rank the college football unis every week. They rank the NFL helmets. They rank the baseball City Connects. Like, uniforms matter all the way down to, like, Little League.
Yes.
Like, you Little League kids, you'll see, Brittany, when your kids get to an age, you're going to be like, Mom, we want like the coolest uniforms when we take the field because it makes us like we're going to play better. You're not, but it makes you feel like you will.
Exactly. I mean, it's just like shoes. I mean, as you guys know, nobody gets more into shoes than professional athletes. It's the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Brittany, this was awesome. Thanks for the extended time. You took over Brett Phillips' time because I guess he doesn't have a phone or a computer in his home, so we're about to make fun of him for that. But thank you. I appreciate the time, and also this was a really great conversation with you for real. And you can check out all of Brittany's articles in The Athletic, and would love to have you on again sometime when you've got another spicy article out there.